we're functioning at such a fast pace. I mean, the world is flying around us, technology, and we'll talk about some of this stuff, the stress, the anxiety, the preoccupation, the to-do lists, the voices of our kids, of our parents, of our friends. There's so many things going on with so many competitions that for a husband and a wife to turn to one another and be intentional, to communicate, to connect, to put aside time in order to check in with each other, to go below the waterline with each other, that's not natural. That's not our natural instinct. Our natural instinct is to be independent, do our own thing, and to lean away from the connectedness. And we're going to unpack some of that today as we talk about the power of two chairs.
Welcome to the Rosbergs, your marriage coaches. Join Dr. Gary and Barbie Rosberg, America's family coaches, who bring 4 decades of empowering marriages across the U.S. and internationally for this podcast to equip you and your partner with encouragement and tools for a great marriage. Here now are your hosts, Dr. Gary and Barbie Rosberg.
We are Dr. Gary and Barb Rosberg, your marriage coaches and America's family coaches, and we are delighted to come alongside of you today as we talk, Barbie, about the power of two chairs.
Oh, yeah. Get ready.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean, ladies, you say to your husband, all right, honey, take me over to the new shopping center and get me 2 chairs. We've talked about this concept all over the world, and if you ever meet anybody who has done coaching, been in events, where we've helped families and marriages, military, first responders, couples, pastors, all over the world. They'll probably say, did they talk to you about those 2 chairs? And sometimes women do get 2 new chairs out of it.
They do. And the reason we know it works because we had to do it in our marriage and it was life-changing. But as we begin.
Well, Barbie, when we ask people, we've been interviewing people and vetting people for a marriage process that we're doing locally here. And we've been asking them, what's going well in your marriage and what do you need to spruce up? And invariably people talk about the C word, and that's communication. And do you know why God gave me 2 ears?
Why?
One is to hear what you say. The other one is to hear what you mean.
That is good.
That's pretty good.
How's it working?
Yeah, well, I'm spending more time trying to figure out how to go between those 2 ears, and I get kind of dizzy. But because you say one thing, but then you may mean something else. And I know that if I'm going to speak woman and understand you, I've got to be willing to listen to what the words are, but also look at what's behind the words.
That's right. Gary, you are such a great student. Years ago, I will never forget, you were counseling. It was in your early days of your counseling. I was a counselor. You were a counselor.
Yeah, okay.
You were counseling as a career. You came home with your heavy briefcase. You walked through the family room from the garage.
Yeah.
One day, Missy said, Daddy. And I said, honey, your daddy doesn't know he's home yet. You know he's home. I know he's home. The dog knows he's home. But the man's not quite here yet.
I haven't quite figured it out yet. And sometimes that is the case because we're preoccupied. We're thinking about stuff. My head's still back at the office or that client that I just left. And so sometimes we're there physically, but we're not there as far as being alert and being responsive. And, I think back, and so we're going to go from, 2 years to, something that happened to us when we were young in marriage with me coming through that back door. But I really do think about what Paul said in 1 Corinthians 16, verses 13 and 14. And he said, be on your guard, stand firm in the faith, be men of courage, be strong. But then, honey, he says, do everything in love. Mm. And we'll unpack that verse, I'm sure, at some point on one of these episodes. And that's not our intent today. But when I think of the words, be on your guard, Paul talks about being alert because the enemy is prowling around looking for someone to devour. And if there's anything that we're seeing over and over again with couples, many of them teachable, wanting to have great marriages, but they aren't alert. They aren't self-controlled. They aren't on their guard. We are, and I get it because I lean into this in my own flesh, we are preoccupied. Mm-hmm. We're not kind of discerning what's going on around us. And why a lot of marriages trip up and have a lot of difficulty is that they're not intentional. Mm-hmm. And we need to be intentional. And sometimes it's sheer fatigue. It's all sorts of stuff. but those block communication.
Well, and at the end of the day, when both people may be coming home from work, or if as a wife or one of you are in the home, I mean, that's a full-time 24/7 job because you go from thing to thing to thing. I mean, if you're in the home, you are never sitting down. So if you're coming home at the end of the day, you might be starting your second job and your mind is full of what you've been doing the last 8 hours. And oftentimes you're still not done. The list isn't finished. So we are oblivious to the person we love the most. And the most important thing is our marriage.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that trips up this whole idea of that communication is that we're functioning at such a fast pace. I mean, the world is flying around us, technology, and we'll talk about some of this stuff, the stress, the anxiety, the preoccupation, the to-do lists, the voices of our kids, of our parents, of our friends. There's so many things going on with so many competitions that for a husband and a wife to turn to one another and be intentional, to communicate, to connect, to put aside time in order to check in with each other, to go below the waterline with each other, that's not natural. That's not our natural instinct. Our natural instinct is to be independent, do our own thing, and to lean away from the connectedness. And we're going to unpack some of that today as we talk about the power of two chairs.
So when you were growing up, you watched your mom and dad do this. I watched my mom and dad do this. Gary, unpack what we both saw in our parents' homes.
Barb, I grew up in Waukegan, Illinois, and my dad owned an industrial laundry. So he had about 100 employees. He did laundry for Great Lakes Naval Station, for big hospitals, for laboratories, nursing homes, hotels, and then individual families as well. And he would leave at about 5:30 in the morning, and then he would get home at about 5:30 at night. So he was gone about 12 hours a day. And the guy, you could set your clock by him. So at about 5:30, he'd pull in the driveway. He always drove really cool cars. So I remember his Datsun 240Z and his Rover TC 2000. He had a Saab Monte Carlo. He had all these really cool cars. But when he would pull in and he would go into the garage, often I'm laying on the green, vinyl or leather couch, I guess it was, watching Gilligan's Island or, some TV show. And I knew when my dad was walking towards the house and when he would come along the sidewalk and then when he would come in the back door, and my dad and my mom would sit down and connect. But there was a rule in the Rosberg family. And that is when John Rosberg, when dad walked in that back door, we were all to be there to greet him. I mean, it was a crazy deal, but my mom said that that's a way to honor dad, to show him love and affection. So there were 4 kids. My sister was in a wheelchair, Gail, the oldest of the 4, and then 3 little brothers. But we would all get at that door. And if we weren't at that door when he walked through, we were in deep yogurt. So dad would come in, he'd, shake our hand, toss all our hair. I mean, he'd acknowledge us, but very briefly, because then we were pretty much kind of scurried out of the room. And my mom and dad would sit on 2 black and white sofa-like love seats in a room we called our family room. And for the next hour, they would talk. And my dad would unpack his day at the laundry with the employees and the customers that were making him crazy or not making him crazy. They would talk about whatever they talked about. And we weren't invited in there unless we were in trouble. That was usually me, the 4 kids. But they would just sit and connect. And honey, I remember there were times I would look around the door jamb and I wouldn't listen to what they were saying. My mom's gums would be flapping. I'd be thinking, man, she's talking a mile a minute. But she was unpacking with my dad what was going on in her life, hence the kids' lives, hence all of our lives. My dad had this unbelievable capacity to listen, to assimilate the information. And then after about an hour, around 6:30, we did this prehistoric thing. We had dinner. In fact, we had dinner around a table. We all sat in the same places. You needed to be at that table, so you didn't sit in front of the TV and certainly no technology. And we would then be connected with by my mom and dad. And they would learn about our days and what was cooking with us. And unwittingly, I mean, believe me, this wasn't intentionally. This wasn't my dad and mom sitting down saying, let's show our kids how to have healthy families. But that's what they were doing. Mm-hmm. And they taught it, and I caught it. Mm-hmm. And Barbie and I are going into our 50th year of marriage this year. And I'm going to tell you something. For most of that 50 years, we've done the same thing.
We have. And, Gary, when I think about, and many of you are of our generation, and you saw your mom and dad do this too. And I think about how they did it so well. And we just assumed that everything was good because they were all talking.
Yeah.
As you described your mom and dad, your dad was a man of few words. But by listening for that hour, he was showing your mother love.
Mm-hmm.
Listening spells love. And you know what? Every man's listening right now, and I want to tell you why. Are you ready? A woman needs to unpack her day. Her burdens are as real, if more real. She's got a lot going on. She's got whatever's going on outside the home, as well as you, but also it's your family. And it's all the details to run the home, and appointments and assignments and stress and relationships. And it's a multitude of things. At the same time, we need to listen to what you, our husbands, are carrying in your hearts so that we can show nurturance, support, love, listening. Now, one thing I don't think a man wants, you don't want to be grilled.
Yeah.
You don't want question after
Yeah.
question
Yeah.
after question.
So it's not gathering information to bust your chops.
No.
It's gathering information because you're connecting to the heart.
Well, you listen, you ask a question,
Yeah.
pause, you think about it through your heart, and then at the same time, simultaneously, you're thinking, what's my husband need? And oftentimes, when I'm listening to you, I think, don't interrupt. That's where I really have to be cautious. Don't interrupt. And what's my husband need? You just need someone, and you need me to get it out of you. And I know oftentimes I study you and I'm thinking, you're wondering, did you make the right decision? You want to tell me a story that really impacted you. Yeah. You want to be animated about some of the biggest highlights of your day. And I want to listen.
Well,
and learn.
and honey, you want me to save it for my wife.
You betcha, baby.
Yeah.
Oh, man, do not even go there. Save it all for me.
Yeah.
Every bit of it.
Yeah. And that's one of the key issues here is that, guys, we hold back some of those juicy morsels and we don't unpack that with other people, regardless of gender. What we do is we save it for our wife. Let our wife discover what's cooking in our lives. So pretty early on in our marriage, somehow we mustered the funds to buy 2 mauve chairs.
Oh, we did.
Or did we have those recovered?
No.
Okay, we bought those new.
We bought them brand new.
I mean, we don't have them anymore, but they'll come back.
What were we thinking? We got brand new furniture after you got your doctorate degree
that's
and
what the
opened
deal
up
is.
your counseling. And by the way, back in the day, counseling was $35 an hour.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah, so we had to save a little bit to get those. But when I would come through the door, even though I was numb that one time that Barb's telling the story, Barb and I would acknowledge the kids, but we would then go to those 2 chairs.
Yeah.
And you had a rule. It was called the 3 Bs.
Oh, yeah. I'd tell these wonderful kids of ours, they were about 5 and 8, I'd say lovingly, but really thoroughly, unless you're bleeding, broken, or bruised, do not interrupt us. We are in these 2 chairs and mommy and daddy are talking. And this is very important. And I remember they would lay on that blue shag carpet.
Exactly.
And they would have their heads up like this, holding up their heads with their little ponytails. And you could see, like, what are they talking about?
Kind of like me.
Yeah.
growing
And
up.
they'd put their hands over the room, from the dining room to the living room to just like
Test the
crossed over.
boundaries.
Yeah. But I'm going to say at dinner, and this is so important, we all ate together. And that was the time when we ask our kids, hey, highs and lows of the day. We'd hear all about their friends, their teachers, who was good, who was bad. And then they'd go out and play at night. It was the greatest. It really was.
And it's the power of 2 chairs.
Yeah.
So again, we're going to come full circle. If we gain favor, let me just say that, in your marriage, if you will listen to us, if you will be teachable, we want you to catch this. So we're going to teach it, but we want you to catch it so that you integrate the power of 2 chairs in your own home. Now, here's what we've learned. About the first 90 seconds that a man and a woman meet at the end of their workday is the most significant time of the day. Now, we've got a lot of people working out of their homes. That shift is beginning to occur. I mean, I just heard Jamie Dimon at JP Morgan said, you know what, everyone's coming back to the office. I mean, so that whole thing is shifting a little bit, but it doesn't matter. If the woman's got a job outside the home, the guy's got a job, and they meet up at, 4:35, 5:30, whatever time, the first 90 seconds that you connect, and we're going to coach you on that for a few minutes, has got to be really intentional because it sets the pace for the rest of the day. And so kind of like in my family, Barb, my dad would greet us, but he, would then kind of scoot us away. I would greet the kids. So it's not that you ignore them.
No, it builds security.
It built security,
Yeah.
But we'd kind of then get them out of the way so we would connect. During that first 90 seconds, guys, when you see your wife, touch her, hug her, give her a kiss, sneak up behind her. I say to gals, if you're preoccupied with something, turn away from whatever that is. So
That's
if you're
right.
texting, if you're on the phone, if you're, talking to one of the kids, grading a report card, washing the dog, making a dinner, finishing your job, whatever it is, be intentional to step away so that you connect.
Well, what you're describing is the valley of the shadow of death. By the time couples get home at the end of the day, it might be between 3 and 6, 7 o'clock at night, and your list still isn't finished. So whatever you're doing when your spouse walks into the room at the end of the day, or you walk into the room, drop everything. You knew how to do it when you were dating.
Yeah.
Do it now. And if you listen to the Gottmans, I watch them on Instagram. I encourage you as well. They recommend the 6-second kiss. Why 6 seconds? Because it takes that long for the serotonin in your brain to be released and to go throughout your body. It's just a wonderful manifestation of connection in marriage.
So let's talk about some of the things. And the word that we've been using the last just week or so is hijack. What hijacks couples from getting to those two chairs?
Anything that can sabotage us, Gary.
Yeah.
I mean, technology, it's funny. When I'm holding my phone, it's like I'm just checking data. But the minute I see you holding your phone, I think the enemy's in the room. I mean, and I know you respond that way to me too, but technology can truly block us. It might be, as I described earlier, fatigue. You're exhausted. But we've got to counter this pattern or this cycle of silence in marriage so that we have a plan on how to connect using two chairs in our marriage. Some of the saboteurs is a preoccupation with our own world. It's what we're thinking about. It's about the undone things. It might be too, Gary, that there are undisclosed. For some people, it might be secrets. So they don't want to be seen. They don't want to be heard. They don't want to be in the company of their spouse. It could be undisclosed secrets, but Gary, it also could be unshared information.
Yeah.
Gee, I spent a little money on the credit card and I haven't quite unpacked that yet. And the bill came today.
Well, it could be that, but it could be just abject sin. So when I go back to what Paul said in 1 Corinthians 16, be on your guard, stand firm in the faith, be men of courage, be strong, do everything in love. There are times people do not connect because they're hiding something. And so, Barbie, you said a secret around finances or whatever, but it could be that sin has gotten a foothold and is keeping our eye off the ball of connection because we're preoccupied because we're covering something. And we know that God doesn't work in the darkness. God works in the light. So there are things that need to break through with confession.
You know, the couples that we work with, this is such a key connector. And those that do this daily. And now if you want a good marriage, you do it 10 minutes a day. It doesn't cost you anything but time. But if you want a great marriage and you do this 20 minutes a day, you designate these two chairs. We'll talk about that more in a minute, just how to do it. It's life-changing. We will talk to our couples that we work with, and they will be flourishing because they are being intentional with time. Those people, we were sitting with a couple over lunch the other day, and they know about the two chairs, but they're just not intentional. They just get preoccupied with all the other things they're doing, babysitting their kids, planning social events. And they look at us and they say, you know, when we're with you, we're really good. We're mindful of it for a few days, but we forget about it. So we're going to talk about that in a moment too.
Yeah, you know, other things that hijack this kind of connection and the power of the two chairs is flat out laziness. And if laziness isn't interrupted, it becomes apathy. And apathy is the biggest killer of marriage. Give me frustration, give me anger, give me a little barking at each other, because then we've got something to work with. But when somebody becomes passive, they disconnect, they pull away, and then they become apathetic. Apathetic means that they're giving up. And that is what Satan loves to do. He loves to see a couple begin to give up. And then, honey, I think another one, and we've written about it, we'll talk more about it on other episodes, but it's open loops of unresolved conflict. So there are times that the guy's still simmering over what happened 2 days ago, or the woman is holding back something because 3 months ago there was a disappointment or a discouragement. So the guy's trying to connect, and when he goes, how are we doing, or what's going on, she said, nothing's going on. He takes it at face value. But what we need to do is move beyond face value to listen with one ear to what you're saying and the other ear what you mean.
Gary, I'd like to add one more.
Yeah.
It's busyness. We are all busy, but there is a degree of busyness that makes everything else important. And your marriage isn't even on a list. And then people are wondering why they're fighting more, or why their marriage is ho-hum or not interesting. I think oftentimes too many people are doing too many things all the time, and they don't know how to boundary or say no or choose to make your marriage a great marriage so you can have more.
So how do we do it? First of all, we need to figure out where are the two chairs. And it's not two chairs that you have to necessarily go by, but it needs to be two chairs that are designated for connection and communication. So it's not two chairs that you necessarily, eat dinner in or watch a game in or play cards in or fall asleep in. But when you go to that chair, guys, or when the wife goes to that chair, it means you're anticipating connection. So you got to figure out where are the two chairs. And then secondly, what time of day? And
Absolutely.
Barb, talk about 4 different times a day.
I will, because there are 4 different times a day. It could be when you first wake up in the morning. And I know when I wake up, I don't feel like discovering the depth of everything that's going on or that you've thought about during the night. But if I wake up happy, then that makes you happy.
Well, we're working with one couple that decided it was 5:30 in the morning.
I know.
And
but that's not good for us.
No, not good for us. But God bless them, because they are both working outside the home. They've got kids, they've got busy days, and they want to make sure they get this done before the day gets away from them. And we applaud them.
Yeah, we do.
Now, one of the things we've learned is at 5:30 in the morning, you may be heavier on data than on vulnerability, because it's a little harder to be vulnerable at 5:30 in the morning. But they're getting the ball rolling. So they are capturing, they're protecting. This time, they're going to those two chairs with the expectation of connecting. So it could be early in the morning. Secondly, it could be after work.
Well, after school or after work. And this is when we did it back in the day. And we knew what time you would get home at the end of the day. I knew where I was. And so I put whatever I was doing aside so that we could have this connection time to rebuild our marriage. So we call it during the valley of the shadow of death. But that was the best time for us so that we would connect and be connected for our family and in the evening. The other time is after dinner. As we got into different stages of our life, we'd go over to two chairs in our kitchen and we'd sit down and we would just rediscover what was going on in our lives, to the point of when one of our kids was over at our house with our grandkids. Remember, she got mad at us?
Yeah, she said, "You're still doing it."
She goes, "You guys, you're still doing it." And then we laughed because when I was with her, staying at her house, helping with the grandkids, guess what she and her husband did every day at 5 o'clock? They went off into two chairs and they were communicating, they were sharing their hearts, and they were building security by utilizing two chairs in their marriage.
So that's the third time a day you can do it.
So the fourth time, Gary, to stay on track, you're doing a great job.
Yeah.
So am I. It's before bedtime. And it might be for some of you that are younger and you have young children, that you put your kids to bed and you are going to sit down and you're going to communicate and you're going to open your heart. And it might sound like this. Hi. Have we met each other? Yes, I believe at the altar. Yeah. It's when we said, "I do." And you can laugh again. ask each other, hey, what's the high point of your day? If you're smart, you'll say, right now, honey.
Yeah.
You know?
Write that one down.
And then work into what was the hard part of your day. I really care. And your burdens are my burdens, and you're not going to go through it together. And no matter what you've gone through, no matter what you feel you've done or haven't done, I'm on your team. So 4 times a day, Gary, let me reiterate them. Would you let me? Early morning, after work, after dinner, or before bedtime.
Yeah. And the other thing, we were just coaching a couple on this, I think it was yesterday. We said, when you do get together and you sit at those 2 chairs, create the milieu. So light a candle. Or I call it an aerator, but that's what you do in the yard when you're getting ready to do fertilizer, I guess. But do something so that you can speak into your that time and make that time a time of focus.
So you're talking about utilizing
Different
your senses.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So one of the things might be, go ahead and light a candle, light a fragrance. What do you call the deal where you got like essential oils?
Is it an infuser?
An infuser.
Yes.
Well, why didn't you say that earlier?
I was letting you experience it.
You'd like to see me dangle over that one a little bit.
I like to watch you dance.
Yeah. So I call this smelly thing. I mean, just get that thing going.
Okay. I want to say something. What we do, we utilize our senses. We play Bocelli in the background. We
play a lot of Italian music.
Candles. We have infusers going off. I keep things organized.
Yeah.
We keep things vacuumed.
Yeah.
It's a clean environment to have clean and clear communication.
Now, when you said I keep things vacuumed, and I said, yeah, you
wait
keep
a
things
minute.
vacuumed. I don't, but
no, you.
But
okay.
Barb does think when I do the vacuuming, it's sexy.
I think it's really sexy.
So sometimes I just turn it on. She doesn't even know if I'm vacuuming.
No, it's my love language. You put that on, and I'm going, oh.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So I wear a power belt, and I turn on the vacuum cleaner.
Yeah, and it works. 50 years, baby.
50 years.
You know what? You ought to buy a vacuum company or something. Or we ought to do vacuum ads.
We ought to do vacuum ads. So,
yeah.
But the whole point of this is to create the environment with some candles, with some music, have a box of Kleenex there.
Let's talk about the outcome.
Bible there. I mean, I've got my Bible there, and connect with them.
So let's talk, Gary, about the outcome. Why 2 chairs, the power of 2 chairs, and what's going to happen from just 10 to 20 minutes a day of the cost of your time and yet the rewards in your marriage.
Well, Barb, recently we were with Jeff and Shanti Felden. Talk about some of their research on this.
They are Harvard researchers. They've graduated from Harvard. They are marriage researchers. We think the world of them. And I'll never forget Jeff unpacking. And as women, we don't understand this. A man sees himself through this filter of, am I adequate? Am I adequate? So, when we have the connection, we can have these times of sharing with one another, bearing one another's burdens as we are called to do. We are truly building one another up in the body of Christ. Gary, one of the first things I've written down here is connection. The power of connection when you take this time with me to just sit in those 2 chairs, and it's really a labor of love. It's showing love to your spouse.
Well, and I think the other thing is it's incumbent upon us to save the energy. Barbie, and that's probably a whole other podcast episode, but to save the energy throughout your day so that you save the best for your spouse. And, I remember one time you said to me, and it was pretty direct.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
You know what I'm going to say?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, well, you say it.
Okay,
it's probably better from you.
No,
it's probably better from me.
I love you. You were working on your doctorate. You had a brand new early counseling practice. You were working full-time and teaching part-time. And I remember saying, Gary, I feel like I'm getting your leftovers and everybody else gets the best.
Yeah. And that was convicting because she was right. You don't have to be a counselor to screw this one up. I mean, I was giving my best at my work, quite honestly, and I wasn't saving my best for my family. And it's taken me a long time to really embrace that, to make sense of that. But I mean, today I give you my best, my worst, my medium.
I love it.
Yeah.
I get it all.
Yeah, you kind of get it all. But what we want to do is we want to be intentional to save back energy so that you've got something to give. So you're not just so spent that your family just gets your leftovers.
Yeah.
I mean, leftovers are fine once in a while, but you know what? You can't make a steady diet of them. We're so grateful that you're joining us. We are Dr. Gary and Barb Rosberg, your marriage coaches, and we're delighted to come alongside of you. Call us with your questions. Leave them on our answering machine. It's 1-855-ROSBERG. And go ahead and whether you're listening on Apple or Spotify or Amazon or iHeart, rate us. And if you like it, rate us 5 stars. Share it with other people. Spread the word, because we're coming alongside as your marriage coaches, and we want to help those that you care about. God's blessings to you. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Rosbergs, your marriage coaches, with Dr. Gary and Barbie Rosberg. To find out more, go to americasfamilycoaches.com. Once you're there, you can check out the many resources that they have available. From their many books to their informative video series, 6 Secrets to a Lasting Love, they've got all the tools you need to help you grow deeper in your relationship with your spouse and with God. Go to americasfamilycoaches.com and click on the Resources tab. Also, if you have a marriage question, you can call 855-ROSBERG and leave a message with your question. We may use your question on a future episode. We appreciate your prayers and support for this ministry. Find out how you can come alongside us when you go to americasfamilycoaches.com. Just search the top of the index for the Donate tab. Thank you for listening in today. Be sure to join us next time for another episode of The Rosbergs, your marriage coaches, with Gary and Barbie Rosberg.
Marriage, it can be challenging, it can be stressful, and it can be absolutely wonderful. If you and your spouse want to strengthen and enhance your marriage, Dr. Gary and Barbie Rosberg can help through a new video series, 6 Secrets to a Lasting Love. A strong and healthy marriage isn't just about feelings or emotions. It is truly 6 specific and intentional kinds of love. The Rosbergs offer this brand new study looking at the biblical loves and principles of a great marriage experience. This video series and accompanying workbook is rich with discussion and group questions designed for couples in one-on-one marriage coaching or in a small group study. Find out more at americasfamilycoaches.com.